So I finally watched The Vision of Escaflowne after it had been rotting on my watchlist for about a year or so. I initially found out about it through a short video on Instagram, but the comment section of my last video led me to finally giving it a shot. So over the last few days I decided to take my time and begin my journey into the world of Gaia. And oh boy, let me tell you, I was in for a ride. The Vision of Escaflowne follows a Japanese high school girl named Hitomi who gets isekai'd into another world, but not the bad kind of isekai, which you see everywhere nowadays, but the good kind of isekai where the main focus is on creating a world which fascinates and just waits to be explored. In this case, it's a fantasy/steampunk setting on a world named Gaia. One day, as she tries to impress her school crush, she runs into a young man named Vaughn, who mysteriously appears directly in her path. Before Vaughn was transported into this world, he was fighting a dragon, which follows him into this new realm to finish the fight. Right away we are presented with one of the major themes of the show, which is fate. Hitomi had always been gifted with the power of fortune telling using tarot cards, but when it comes to Vaughn, she begins to actually see his future. She warns him about the dragon's lethal attack and helps him with defeating his enemy. Shortly after this, Vaughn begins to get teleported back into his world Gaia, but this time Hitomi is taken with him. Now the show smartly uses this as an opportunity to explain the setting to Hitomi and to us as viewers. Hitomi accompanies Vaughn as he returns to his home to be crowned King of Vanilla. Turns out the young man that she ran into was the Prince of Vanilla all along. Along with the new title of King, Vaughn also inherits the kingdom's ancient Gailameth, Escaflowne. Gailameths are basically Gundams which mostly fight with medieval weaponry. Escaflowne is a particularly unique and powerful Gailameth with the nickname the Dragon, which comes from it being able to transform into a dragon. It turns out that slaying the dragon was a rite of passage to becoming king and inheriting Escaflowne. We also found out that Vaughn's older brother failed to accomplish this and abandoned his kingdom. Just a few minutes after Vaughn is crowned king, Vanilla is suddenly being attacked by the Zybok Empire. The Zybok forces using cloaking devices catch Vanilla by surprise. Hitomi finds out that her psychic abilities are amplified in this world and grants her the power of seeing the invisible Gailameths, and thus when they are about to strike. Using this ability, she and Vaughn fight their way to escape. However, Vanilla's defeat was inevitable. Vaughn has just lost his kingdom and immediately turns his focus on getting revenge on the Zybok Empire. Without getting too deep into the plot, the remainder of the story follows these characters as they seek refuge, allies and struggle to hold the Zybok Empire from achieving their goal. After finishing the show, I can say that this is an anime that has so much going for it to make it enjoyable and worth watching, but I can't help but to feel that in the second half of the anime something felt off and the story felt a bit rushed. Now don't get me wrong, I did really enjoy this anime and there's plenty of good points that I'm going to cover just in a few seconds, but there are also a few bad points that held back the anime and that I need to address. But first, let's talk about the good. We have a fleshed out fantasy environment with solid world building. Gaia appears to exist in a different plane from Earth from our perspective. On Gaia, however, the Earth can be seen in the night sky and the people refer to it as the Mystic Moon. Hitomi being a woman from the Mystic Moon is a major key factor of the events which happen over the course of the series. Gaia consists of a number of kingdoms, most of which we don't get to visit or learn about in much detail, but we do get hints of the political landscape. Chivalry and duty are held in high regard, and the difference of the class systems are apparent, including revelations of illegitimate heirs and examples of forbidden love. We are given a reason to invest in most of the characters, each having their own arcs that are influenced by the world around them. Almost every character in the series has some level of depth to them, whether they are struggling with their place in the world or the emotional impact with the things happening around them. We as an audience can empathize or relate with them. Also, this series is another perfect example of beautifully hand-drawn animation. When comparing it to other anime productions of its time, you would be hard-pressed to come up with anime that exceeded this level of excellence. I have to say, every movement of the Gyllemeths was a treat to my eye, and especially the combat scenes were stunning to witness. But not only that, but the design of the Gyllemeths may be one of my favorite things of the show. When I think about giant mechs, I mostly think of Gundams which are based in a sci-fi setting and not a steampunk one. The perfect execution of showing how the Gyllemeths work grants them the ability to actually be believable. You can tell that whenever you get a glimpse of the inside of Gyllemeth, how much thought and detail went into these designs. In terms of the Zybug Empire, the Gyllemeths show their technological advancement that they have over the other kingdom of Gaia, and not only because of their ability to fly. Also, I could not finish the good part of Escaflowne without talking about the soundtrack of the series. It is certainly fantastic, and it finds itself having a good variety of styles and always keeps things fresh while never feeling like it is out of place for the setting. The soundtrack amplifies the mood and the themes of the series perfectly and was always a blast to listen to. Unfortunately, with good there always comes something bad, and as I already mentioned, I felt like the second half of the anime felt kind of rushed. In the first half we get some decent character developments with Hitomi and Vaan, and that her powers can be used in different ways and that fate is not something that cannot be changed. I don't know at which point exactly, but at some point it felt like the story was just thrown into your face and way too many things were happening for you to even comprehend the whole plotline. Without spoiling anything, at the ending of the anime, I was left a bit unsatisfied, which I think happened because of the sudden pace change of the story and the unnatural speed that the story was exhilarating to. In conclusion, I think that Escaflowne is definitely worth to watch if you're a fan of the genre, or if you just want to experience an anime that is considered a classic for many people. I myself am glad that I finally got to experience this series, as it is one perfect example of peak 90s anime fiction with a much more wholesome style of telling stories and creating unknown worlds. Also, it is always a blast for me to see how creative the things were back in the day and how they managed to connect themes like fantasy and steampunk with giant mechs. And I also want to thank everyone who recommended me this series on my last video. The last thing to say is that I highly recommend you to give Escaflowne a try, as it sadly becomes a hidden gem that slowly gets lost in time, but will forever remain a true classic of the 90s anime era.